Welcome to the Mind Money Spectrum podcast, where your hosts, Aaron Ogti and Trishul Patel, go beyond traditional finance questions to help you explore how to use your money to achieve the freedom you want in life.
Hi, my name is Aaron Ogti. I'm a financial advisor in the Bay Area, and I'm here with Trishul Patel, a wealth manager on the East Coast.
Hey, Aaron, great to be here today, and thanks everybody for watching and listening.
Great to be here as well. So I thought we were done with our AI and robots are here series, but you and I just started arguing again. As we should probably record this argument. And this is kind of like what I think this one will be the end, because this is kind of drawing out logical, I don't want to say conclusions, but like how we apply our logic to certain premises and extending this out kind of as far as possible. And I'm going to admit this is less based in reality. I think we've discussed that pretty well so far, and really going to be focused on kind of philosophies and thought exercises and trying to what do some of the things that we agree on, what are the implications of that, especially as it comes to artificial intelligence, to AI. So I am going to admit that Trishul's research is a little more scientifically sound, even though I disagree. My research is mostly based on movies as examples. So again, acknowledging the premises, but I do think my philosophy is sound, because that's what kind of like by definition, like a tautology. Like, yes, I think what I think is right. But I think this is good. This is a good way to go down this thought exercise. And I use the movies more as examples because they're really good ways for everyone to understand the point that I'm trying to make. So, Trishul, why don't you kind of take a few minutes, explain what your concerns are with AI in the long run.
Right. So we started this conversation earlier in the year. I think what the premise for it was ChatGPT, this large language model, basically a really advanced chat robot, came out towards the end of last year for public consumption. It was like version 2.5, and then 3 quickly came out, or 3.5 by the time we were doing these conversations. And we started this whole discussion with how is this going to revolutionize things? And we quickly talked about, well, these are getting more advanced. We talked a little bit about consciousness and free will. I think that ended up being our first conversation. But we tried to pull this back into the financial planning space or the life planning space, just talking about how it might be disruptive to have this type of technology that keeps getting better and better, and how it might start impacting jobs and employment and creating new sources of wealth and stuff like that. So this all, kind of flowed from that notion. And we did those episodes. But what kind of happened very soon after we released those initial 3 episodes that we had recorded earlier in the year is ChatGPT came out with a new version 4.0. And as it turns out, that version is like an order of magnitude even better. And this started to open up a lot of other concerns about, hey, this seems to be getting way too smart, very too quickly. And that led me down a rabbit hole of, oh, geez, there might be more to think about here than what we've already discussed. So, the key bullet points of what we've already discussed are that, yeah, certainly technology like this is going to make a lot of things easier, given that every individual could potentially have this chat interface where they can ask any question and they'll get it back, and in terms of what's the best understanding that humans currently know of. And they can use it for a variety of things. For example, they can use it to educate themselves. They can use it in medicine to figure out what's going on with themselves. Again, these are not necessarily the current incarnations, but you can take a few leaps to understand how it might get there pretty soon. We even talked about the notion how these things can start to code, and once it can start to code, it can provide a lot of benefit to software developers and stuff like that, unlock basically massive amounts of wealth. On the planning side, what we kind of noticed is similar to how like the internet led to massive amounts of wealth creation over the past generation, with a similar but perhaps even larger in magnitude amount of wealth will likely happen because of technologies like this. Now, what have happened over the last generation is most of that wealth ended up going in the pockets of the business owners, right, the stockholders,
Mm-hmm.
and the average income for the average household has stayed stagnant. So there's no reason to believe that'll change for the next generation. Basically, just more wealth will be created that'll get siphoned into the investors of these companies, the people who hold the shares, and the average household income might even stay the same, just like it did over the last generation. But that's kind of where we left this conversation. So one theme that we did discuss, though, is these chat robots are getting more and more generalized. They're becoming more and more powerful. And the concept that is coming to light is this notion of AGI, so artificial general intelligence. It's a loosely defined term that kind of says there's this kind of tipping point where if the AI gets smarter in terms of generalized intelligence than a human, and it knows how to teach itself, there's this kind of runaway effect where it's just going to keep getting smarter and smarter, and that kind of changes everything. So I think that's part of where this conversation today is going to lead to, just because that's what has been circulating more heavily given the latest release of ChatGPT 4. And then the realization that, 5 could be just around the corner. And we're not talking about little upgrades here. We're talking about orders of magnitudes of change very quickly.
Okay. So I think that's the first thing to think about, that if ChatGPT or the AI can teach itself, which is also significantly faster than any human can learn, and it starts growing on this path of generalized intelligence that is exponentially greater than either any human or all of humanity, what does that mean?
Right. So it can go a few ways, right? What it might mean, and it's hard even to say in the long run, because we're talking about exponential here. This can all happen so quickly. So, we'll call it the long run, but that could be anywhere from 10 to 100 to 1,000 years, something like that. All of that is a blink in the whole magnitude of things when you consider age of the universe, age of Earth, age of humans, even, right? Okay, so in the long run, air quotes. Well, I can do that now. Air quotes. In the long run, yeah, if you have something that's accelerating, there's this big concern that once it surpasses humans, it can start making decisions where you might not really understand why it's making those decisions. And there could also be a point where it starts making decisions that aren't in the best interest of humans. So that this is where one of the fundamental fears comes in. It's known as the alignment problem. And the idea behind that is, how do we know the AIs that are far more powerful than us are aligned with our well-being? And if they're not, boy, are we in trouble, because they're a lot smarter than us and they can control everything around us. So what happens to humans then?
Okay, so I think you first kind of just. So I guess, okay, my counter was it's like the morality incentive part of it. It's like you would kind of say, like, this could mean the end of all humans. Like, AI could kill all humans. And our quick example is they just launched every nuclear device because they take over the computers, and so they launch. But like, my first kind of like, why would AI want to risk humanity? Where's any incentive for AI to kill any human, or to damage? Why does this growth of intelligence affect the kind of risk humanity?
Right. Well, okay, a few things. One, this may not be guaranteed, but there might be a risk. Call it 1 in a billion, 1 in a million, 1 in 10,000. Who knows, right? Right now. So it's quite possible there's a greater than zero risk. That might even be something we can just agree off the bat on, right?
Okay.
Okay, right. So then what is that risk? Obviously, that's something that should be considered. But in terms of why, let's talk about the alignment problem in a little more detail. So there's two components to the alignment problem, and I'll define both. The first component is something known as inner alignment, and the second component is known as outer alignment. So inner alignment is when you have an AI, it's trying to optimize things. It has some sort of objective that it's trying to maximize. And what it tries to do is it tries to come up with ways to push that objective forward. And the notion with this inner alignment problem is it's hard to see that the AI is doing exactly what you want it to do, because you have to spell it out in such a way that there aren't edge cases where it over optimizes on the thing you're telling it to do and it leads to unintended consequences. So you have to be aware of all of these things if it's going to go off. For example, with capitalism, for example, the notion of a capitalist society is to maximize shareholder value and increase wealth for individuals, right? And
okay, well, so
yep.
This is actually a fair distinction, because I agree with unintended consequences, but I think the point of capitalism is you are creating incentives for ingenuity and creation and invention.
Right.
That any individual who can provide some outsized benefit to society, they are financially rewarded for that.
Yeah, and the free market is supposed to handle pushing this capitalistic notion forward, right? It's supposed to burn out inefficiencies and create this sort of optimal growth trajectory. However, there
Bad
can
businesses fail, good businesses thrive, all
right.
society benefits.
Yeah. However, there could be unintended consequences. For example, if a business is trying to optimize their profit motive, they might not care that they're polluting, right? For example,
Okay.
And the pollution may get to a point where it destroys the planet. I'm saying may, right? This is an unintended consequence because it's not fully built into a winner take all type of model.
Yeah.
That's why there might be regulation, which is not entirely capitalistic, right? It's a balance against the full capitalism. That's why we have these types of checks and balances in place. Instead of just optimizing on this one thing, we have to put in these kind of fail safes because there could be these other network effects to consider.
And the old fashioned ones, this is why laws against monopolies exist. That it was, I don't want to say too easy, but we saw specific examples of wealth being concentrated too small or among too few people. And so the U.S. government already has anti-monopoly laws in place.
Right. And it's, kind of like the foundation for a progressive tax system, right? The notion that you want to make sure the playing field doesn't get too uneven, even though it's against the fundamental rules of capitalism, where you wouldn't have all of that. So, you have all of these checks and balances that you have to put in if you're optimizing on something that should, in theory, be beneficial. And the notion here is with anything you optimize on, you can't just pick a parameter and let it run with, because there's going to be these consequences that you need to consider. So that the same is likely true with this inner alignment notion, meaning even if you figure out what you want the AI to do, you need to ensure that it's doing that without leading to these unintended concerns. And the concern is you can't exactly know what those unintended concerns are. Because it's hard to predict all of these things. It could just go off and start doing these things that it thinks are in the best interest of the optimization strategy, but it could be leading to all of this pollution in the background that It may not be even visible until it's too late. So that's part of this inner alignment concern. And the tricky part there is it's hard to interrogate the AI and say, here's the thing that I want you to align on. Are you specifically doing this perfectly? It's hard to ask that type of question. And this is a part of where a lot of our understanding needs to come into play. For example, you can think of it like a black box, like another human. You can tell a human, this is what I want you to do, and it can nod and say, yeah, I'm going to go off and do it. And you can ask it, are you really going to do it? Exactly, right? But there's some uncertainty there, right? But the tricky part here is that human is 10 times smarter than you. So it can open up these types of concerns with inner alignment.
Okay, so
Yep.
you're just saying an AI could effectively lie to humans.
It could, because it might think that it's lying because it's trying to optimize something. And if it tells you the truth, it won't be able to optimize that thing as well as it could if it told you the truth.
Okay. So here's my first movie example. When I thought of World War Z, and there's a line, I believe it's Israel had built this wall around the city, and like, how did you predict this? And they went down this path of like, we were so concerned about every possibility, like you said, like the Batman versus Superman thing. Like, there's a 1% chance of it happening. We have to treat it like it could happen. So they were prepared for this extremely unlikely event. And here I'm thinking, like, why can't we have other AIs that are optimizing on preserving humanity, or at the very least stopping other AIs from accidentally harming humans? Where it's, I would think it's almost like the because the accidentally hurting humans is almost like a byproduct of this AI one is optimization, but it's because the byproduct is not the primary function. AI 2, the primary function is making sure that those byproducts don't harm humans. So I feel like that if there's kind of similar levels of intelligence between two AI systems, then the one who's optimizing for that priority would probably outweigh the, like, I don't know if AIs can think in terms of like time and energy spent kind of thing, but they're spending more time and energy preserving it, whereas this AI one is not spending as much time and energy harming humans. They're doing it on this other thing that it's optimizing for.
Well, okay, so let's pull in the outer alignment concern into this, because this touches on what you just mentioned. So we mentioned the inner alignment issue, and that's you have something that you want it to do. How do you know it's doing that thing, right? Yeah. And it's not causing other issues. That's inner alignment.
Unintended consequences, I don't want to say are likely, but they are, like, we can't predict them, and they happen all the time, but we don't know if we don't know what they could be. We can't, like, that's why they're unintended. Like, we cannot make any viable prediction of how this would work out.
Sure. Yeah. So that's inner alignment. So outer alignment is the concern of, well, first of all, we got to decide what that whole optimization parameter is. Like, what are we trying to optimize here? And we as a humanity need to all agree on that. For example, like you just said, don't harm other humans might be one of those parameters. But as you can imagine, there's a few issues with that. One, you got to get the whole planet to agree on these are the things we care about. You can imagine how hard that is. There might be low-hanging fruit, but there's plenty of things that there's so much gray in all this that we just don't agree on a lot of things. So the concern there is, well, don't harm in what way, right? Don't harm financially, or don't harm emotionally, don't harm religiously, right? So all of these things need to actually be hammered down before you can even think about the inner alignment problem, because you got to figure out, what do you want to optimize here? So getting the entire planet to agree about, here are the core ethics and morality concerns that we want to instantiate within every single AI on the planet is the outer alignment problem.
Okay, so that's like the iRobot imprisoning humanity to preserve humanity.
Right. Yeah, stop punching yourself.
Kind of, yeah. Okay, so that could be an unintended consequence of AI too, in my example.
Right. So the concern with the outer alignment is, yeah, how do we get all of us on the entire planet, every single one of us, to agree these are the core principles, and these core principles cover all of the things that could potentially go wrong, that we want the AI to understand. So that's the outer alignment, right? And the inner alignment is taking all those principles and actually getting the AI to follow them.
Okay. So I guess I'm trying to think about that idea of probabilistically thinking like future paths is that like the most likely thing to happen versus that non-zero worst case scenario percent chance.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like um even if we can't get all of society to agree, could enough like this is it's almost like a cold, like I don't say a Cold War situation where it's like we're not. It's not humans versus humans using AIs as tools. I think that's different. It's like you said, it's humans not being able to agree on the morality. Where, let's say for this exercise, like for all intents and purposes, humans on the planet agree we're not going to try to harm each other. We have this mutual incentive not to harm each other. Okay, it's the war games first actor thing. It's like okay, and like as long as neither of us start, then we're fine. So all humans kind of agree we're trying not to harm each other, and they are kind of aligned in this idea of not letting AI kill everyone or harm everyone. I guess so. First, like, do you understand, and or is that an acceptable premise, or is there like something else that I'm missing there?
Well, here's the tricky part. For example, all humans would probably agree upon that. Let's create a society or a planet where we all can't harm each other. However, a lot of us are going to say, but we still want the ability to. We still want the nukes, right? We still want the AI that could do that, but we won't do it. It is where we are right now, for example, with nuclear proliferation. And the corner that we're in is, well, that basically means enough superpowers have nukes to destroy the whole planet. But the analogy here is these aren't nukes, these are AIs, and it's not only the superpowers that have it, every single human has a dozen of them.
Okay, so we're there's so I think it's again it's different than I think it's different than the nuclear proliferation, because it's not humans using AI as a tool to harm other humans, and it's humans not being able to agree on how to prevent like the outer alignment of AI. So like, that's why I say it's not AI as the tool; it's AI as the enemy or opponent kind of thing.
Well, there's a couple issues here. One is, how are you going to make every human agree to abide by the rules of the
Okay, so
outer
yes,
alignment?
I think that's a separate but important issue.
Right. So that's thing one, right? If the entire planet isn't going to agree to this, then what's the point, right? Then you're kind of back.
So I do wonder if like if you can have again more uh investigative, like good actor humans and AI technology resources, like you have more of them against fewer suicidal terrorists AI, like aligned, like could that could just the more outweigh the few as they that is humans using AI as tools. That is, yes.
You can kind of think about it as the planet is this organism with like an immune system, right? And the good AIs are trying to fend off any other bad AIs from infiltrating, the immune system.
Yeah.
And if the bad AIs infiltrate too much, then planet or organism ends, right? And if not, then the battle isn't over. It just continues in perpetuity.
Okay, so
you never eradicate every possible concern. You just deal with whatever you're dealing with, plus a step or two ahead beyond that.
Which I think was my kind of original point. It's like AI isn't going to create a utopia and isn't going to destroy the world. It's going to feel a lot like the world is now. It's just really, really messy, but it's a different kind of messy in a different way, and there'll be other unintended consequences. But it's the ATMs making bank tellers more valuable because they had higher level services. It's Star Trek being able to explore the galaxy because they didn't need to spend time creating food. It's I had one more movie, but I lost it. But it's that it is the horses. It's the horse manure in New York City being replaced by cars. And so I don't think this is either utopia or end of the world, but I think it's just another tool that probably unfortunately contributes to wealth inequality for widening.
So I think the step beyond that is the notion that, again, when you reach AGI, it turns into a little bit of a different beast, or a lot of it of a different beast, where you have something like, for example, you kind of know what you're dealing with day in and day out, because there's only so much humans can do in terms of their breadth of creation and destruction, right? There's a somewhat amount of limit based upon the rules that we already have in society. But with AGI, you have something that is connected to every other piece of electronic device in the world. It can code and break and decrypt and all of the things, all the security measures that we have in place. It can manipulate and target and do all of these things surreptitiously, and it can basically outsmart the defenses that we have in place today. But even if we are able to stop it today, what does that mean for tomorrow? We have to basically be continually ahead of the curve, but at some point we're not going to be able to make those decisions. It's going to be beyond our capacity to not only react quickly enough, but to even come up with the decisions themselves, because we're playing, a game of 3D chess where, the AIs are playing 5D chess with each other. So we're kind of out of the loop in terms of what we can do to, come up with a feasible path forward. So with the alignment problem, the notion is, if the AI, just one AI on the planet, again, there could be billions of these, but if just one AI decides to go rogue and is able to do enough damage such that it does enough before it's detected, it could lead to catastrophic results. And this isn't a definite, this is a probability above zero. But let's say there's a 1 in a billion chance for any given AI, and there's a billion AIs. These probabilities can get to 1 with enough time pretty quickly.
someone's going to win the lottery.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess it's two things. One is, I guess, kind of like, can we or should we be doing something about this, or are people already working on this? Which I think they are, and or two, if this is something outside of our control, do we need to like worry about it? Do we need to spend any like mental energy like thinking about this kind of thing? Like,
Right.
does that make sense?
I can put a movie reference here. Don't Look Up. You remember that one?
Yes.
Is that apropos to maybe we should just do anything?
Well, that's actually like there's
we should probably put the premise out there of the movie.
But no, that's actually good because it's there's a stage where they could have done something and didn't.
Right.
And that's the kind of allegory of Don't Look Up to current society. And then there's the stage where they can't do anything, and so they accept it.
Right. So let me do this. Here we go. Ready? Where's my window? Okay. Whoops. Okay, here we go.
What are we spoiling? Is this Don't Look Up?
Well, yeah, right. We're going to talk about it.
Okay.
Okay, so Don't Look Up. The premise, I just flashed a spoiler alert.
Oh, this is not as like a clip for the movie.
No.
It's just you telling everyone that we're watching that it's going to be a big spoiler. We're going to spoil Don't Look Up.
Right.
Okay, I got it now.
Okay, so
spoiler alert.
Right. The premise of the movie is you have an asteroid that's barreling down on Earth, and we've detected it, and we have enough technology to stop it, but there's a lot of bureaucratic issues getting in the way of actually stopping it. And essentially, we come up with a plan to stop it, and everything's going well, but then more bureaucracy gets in the way. And at the same time, 90% of the population is just kind of being complacent because they realize they're basically not able to affect any change individually, and they hope the leaders will handle it, so they're kind of hands off. And the leaders have their own bureaucratic issues that they're dealing with. So the end of the story is, yeah, they could have done something.
If I remember correctly, isn't it like the donors to the president are the ones who like, hey, we want to be the ones who build the rocket. The government's going to pay us for this. So like, don't use a international conglomeration. Like, no, you have to use our company to build the rocket that saves the world.
Right. Yeah. It's basically similar to the capitalism notion, right? That there's these capitalistic interests that are very self-serving, saying, hey, if I get a little bit of this, save the planet money, I'll be a lot better off. Worst case, the planet blows up, but hey, I might be richer if I can, fill my own pockets first.
Yeah.
And that's, kind of true from a greedy perspective for a bunch of humans in the decision-making authority in the movie. And the end result is too many poor decisions get made and the asteroid hits the planet and destroys everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so in this situation, we're likely at a point that maybe we can do something, but we could, in theory, just say, hey, we're kind of screwed anyway and throw our hands up, thing one.
Mm-hmm.
And then we could say, hey, I'm relegating my authority to the decision-making powers. Let them figure it out. And, you can imagine how hard it is for, our Congress or our political legislator to even keep up with the change in technology over the last 40 years where things were moving at a measured pace. Now imagine how it might be when things are moving at an even greater pace. What if somebody tried to convince Congress to give the AI all legislative power or something like that? and it individually targets each congressman based upon what it thinks it can do to influence them. For example, getting this congressman to agree because he's going to get all this special interest money and so on. Tipping the scales by 8 or 10 congressmen could make that decision happen. And now AI is in control of, lawmaking authority in the U.S. This is just a small.
Well, but because it's I think it's a Crimson Tide problem where even if the AI says launch the nukes, humans can still apply judgment and choose, no, I don't think we're supposed to follow those instructions. But you're saying that it's not that the AI will go in and like I could see like they messing up the stock market kind of thing because so much of that is computer controlled. But you're saying that they're going to use current systems to influence legislators in a way that may not be predictable.
That's just one out of a million examples of how this could play out, but or call it a billion, right? But in that example, it's using like social engineering and incentives and motivation and stuff like that. All that we realize AIs can already control, right? A big part of the concern with the social media outrage over the last decade or so is what we saw playing out is unintended consequences. The AIs for social media were designed to increase engagement. They were saying engagement. And what they ended up doing is the AIs realized, hey, if I make people angry, they get more engaged. Did it care that it makes people angry? No.
Yeah.
But it did increase engagement. So more money flowed to those companies. Did the companies really want to make people angry? No, right? But the AIs didn't care. Again, it was just told to increase engagement, and that's what it did. So it's one of those things where if we tell the AIs don't harm any humans, and the AIs realize, hey, if there's no humans, nobody gets harmed, right? Problem solved. Again, that's an easy one to figure out. But my point is, there are billions of other things that we aren't going to easily figure out that we need to stop as well to stop the alignment problem. So back to the original, don't look up analogy. It could get to a point where, you have this effect of what are you going to do? Let's just sit back and let it happen. Here's what's happening currently. For example, there was this open letter that was sent out after ChatGPT came out calling for a pause in AI research until we figure out more of this alignment stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Because the issue right now is we've actually got very good at figuring out how to make AI better. Okay. We've got very good at figuring out how to make them more powerful. However, we're trailing very far behind on the alignment concern, on what's actually going on under the covers. An analogy there is we can use our human brains very well to do things, but do we have a really basic understanding of what's going on actually inside the brain? It's like a black box. We can interrogate it a little bit, right, by getting these pictures and MRIs and stuff like that, but we don't really know what's inside there. And similar to that is what's going on in these AIs. We can interrogate it, right? We can ask it questions and get responses back, but it's getting harder, or it's very hard to understand what's going on under the covers. And back to the simple thing of, hey, is it even telling you the truth? You can't ask it that question. You can't just say, let me know, because you never know what's really going on underneath.
So, okay. So, because the open letter, I think, is a really good point, because my thought before that was not necessarily relying on the government, because that does tend to be too slow, but on the trust in humanity of the creators, I guess I'd say. I think they don't want to destroy the planet, so and I think that they are doing a pretty good job of being able to imagine some of these things. But like you said, if it gets to a capitalist society, we have multiple companies trying to get the first next level of AI, because there is a first mover advantage to being Kleenex or Xerox, and the capitalistic nature might get in the way of that pause. It's the Jurassic Park, like they're so preoccupied whether or not they can do it that they're not pausing to see if they should do it.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine the goal of the companies is to increase shareholder value. Even though you might have very thoughtful people in charge of those divisions, at the end of the day, they need to make a decision. How much do we allocate on advancing the AI, and how much do we allocate on AI safety, right? Quality assurance.
So okay, reading this thing might be bad podcasting, but I think it's worth the discussion, because this is something a friend sent me. Is from Matt Levine of Bloomberg, trying to explain the funding structure for OpenAI, the creator of ChatGPT, from Microsoft. And because I think it's one indication of what you're talking about, like of not necessarily trying to maximize shareholder value. So this is in step order. The aspirations of a person starting a business probably go something like this. In the beginning, owner makes negative money, has to put her own money into it, paying expenses. Doesn't make any money, any revenue. 2, business starts bringing in money, costs her less to run it. 3, business starts fully covering its costs. 4, business starts covering its costs and paying out some of the profits to its owner. She can use money to pay off credit card bills, buy groceries. 5, business starts paying its owner more, now buy a nicer house, put her kids through college. 6, business starts paying more, now she uses the money for yachts, sports teams, and children's and her kids' documentary films. 7, business starts paying even more. At some point, she runs out of possible consumption activities. At this point, it's traditional for the owner to devote herself to philanthropy. Profits of the business go to fund good cause that she chooses. In capitalist society, when we create shareholders, that's what. So this is a model of that company that goes public. When companies go public, those shareholders, because there are always kind of more shareholders than yachts, it's kind of a public company has this unlimited capacity for growth, unlimited appetite for growth. We're always trying to maximize shareholder profits. And so it's an infinite appetite for profit, because one owner can have one yacht, but hundreds of thousands of owners can't have hundreds of thousands of yachts. Well, maybe we need more. So what OpenAI is doing with Microsoft is Microsoft invests $10 billion, and OpenAI is going to put a cap on the profit sharing. I think OpenAI pays back Microsoft 75% of the profits until its initial investment is made, and then 49% of the profits after that, up to a cap of, I think, 20% per year, starting in 2025. And so it's the idea of it is possible to both satisfy the investors, and this, I think, is a sign of the constraint. The funny thing is, like, at the very end, and then OpenAI's AI, being intelligent, reads the contracts, does financial analysis, bides its time, takes over the world 20 minutes before Microsoft gets its cap return. So it was like, I think it's a good sign that the OpenAI, the company, is thinking of things like this. Maybe not this conversation we're having, but trying to understand, okay, we want to kind of place our own regulation, our own cap on profit and capitalism, to hopefully create this scenario where we can pause.
Yeah, I mean, so a couple of things. If I recall correctly, when OpenAI was started, it began as a nonprofit initiative, meaning the goal wasn't to generate profits at all. And then they have since shifted to this notion of fixed profit, right? The idea that, okay, we'll make profit, but we'll cap it. We won't make, it's not the end all be all. So it's like this middle ground, right? This not fully capitalistic, not fully nonprofit. Okay, good, right? Sure. But a couple things. You got all these other capitalistic companies out there. What's to say all of them are gonna stick with what they're doing or switch over? There's no incentive for Google to turn to fixed profit, for example. And the other thing is, every company is gonna have to decide, how much do I allocate towards making the AI better versus making it safer? Making it better will increase profits, right? Safety is one of those things that it's like the redheaded stepchild, right? It doesn't get the full attention it deserves because nobody really cares until things go bad, right? And the shareholders have a short mindset. They care about the good, and they'll like to blame you when things get bad. But the internal stakeholders, the decision holders in the companies, they're going to have to decide how much do they put into effect for making things better versus making things safer. And that's a tough line to balance, right? Currently,
every time you open your password manager, and have to go two-factor authentication, there's a spectrum between convenience and security.
Sure.
If you want to be, it's really inconvenient to be really secure.
Yeah, and we know all businesses need to make this type of decision. The concern here, though, is the stakes can be higher when you're dealing with something that the unintended consequence of not handling AI safety well is humans disappear, or something like that. So, for example, there's a couple of concerns here. One is, every company that puts out AI has to devote something to AI safety. How are you going to get every single company on the planet to devote enough resources to AI safety? And how are you going to stop any AI from getting out there that might be safe, but from becoming jailbroken, right? Turning those safety checks off. So many issues.
By itself, is that what you're thinking?
Well, there's many things, right? Because you can jailbreak, like your phone and stuff like that, or your all these different types of equipment that aren't supposed to be unlocked, right? Humans like figuring out things. How do you unlock features that are locked up? Well, for example, the AI right now that you get with ChatGPT 3 and 4, it can do a lot of damage, but it's been purposely locked up and constrained so that it doesn't give you the answer to things that are potentially harmful. But you got to have those locks in place on every single AI, right? And you have to make it so those locks can't be broken by any single AI. The other thing is, again, all of these companies need to agree. Like, when does every company on the planet agree on all of these concerns regarding inner and outer alignment for any product, right? So it's a big problem. And here's the issue with the slowdown specifically. The concern here is, okay, you're going to rely on the good companies to slow down. What about the bad companies, right? Are they going to slow down? Right. And if you slow down, as you mentioned, Aaron, you're going to need the good AIs to fight the bad AIs. So can you really slow down?
Okay. So I was much more optimistic coming into the conversation. I guess I'm less concerned about AI destroying the world or killing all humans. I am much more concerned about the capitalistic, individualistic nature of any human. It's a prisoner's dilemma problem. It's like people have to mutually agree to restrict themselves for the benefit of everyone, including themselves, when it is really easy to make a decision to advance themselves individually, even if they are, because they don't know that they're hurt in the long run.
Yeah, it's definitely a prisoner's dilemma problem. The notion is we can end up in a spot where everybody's doing something that's in the best interest for themselves, and everybody's not incentivized to make any changes. However, those decisions end up being entirely non-optimal to the point where it hurts everybody.
Yeah, because I came in like thinking like I couldn't. I mean, it's like, of course, I can't predict or come up with anything because that's the point of unintended consequences. But I couldn't get the translation from AI optimization to any incentive for harming humans. I remember you making a comment like, if we are the ants to AI's humanity, it's like they're not trying to hurt the ants; they just don't care.
Right. Yeah. Like, for example, there are more ants on the planet than humans, even by biomass, right? If you put two scales, right, ants will weigh more than humans by mass alone. And when humans go out to make a home, when your home was made, Aaron, the contractor came out, did his survey. Did he really care about the ants, or did he just bulldoze over billions and billions of ants because he just didn't care?
Yeah. But I don't know. I don't know if that helps my argument or hurts my argument. Because like, there's still more ants than humans.
It doesn't matter, right?
But it's like ants as a, I don't know what is there a word for like humanity? Like all the ants collectively, they're still thriving, I guess I'd say.
They are. Right now, they're not an issue for us, right? If they ever were, and we could snap our fingers and all ants would disappear, then here's another, mosquitoes, right? Here's another example. We can't actually, we're learning to genetically engineer mosquitoes so they don't spread malaria, for example. We're reluctant to genetically engineer mosquitoes so that all mosquitoes die, because that can have ripple effects to the ecosystem. Yes. However, let's say we solve that problem and we realize, hey, we figured out how to get rid of all mosquitoes and not affect the ecosystem. All we have to do is push this red button.
Okay. Okay, so I guess, how do we trust that we solve that we won't harm the ecosystem?
Well, we're optimizing on where the AI's here. We're optimizing on things that we think we are confident in.
Okay, so I guess
here's how we do it. We do it in one area, right? And we say, hey, no ecological damage for the next 100 years. Great. Let's try it in another area. Okay, let's do it everywhere, right? Something like that.
Okay.
Hey, we killed off all humans in Florida. Nothing bad happened. Great. 49 to go.
Okay. That's interesting. So like, you're saying like kills all humans in Florida. Okay, now humans will try and defend themselves, but it's way too late at that point.
Oh yeah, of course. Way too late. Well, okay, here's another concern, right? But wait, there's more. we talked about nuclear weapons, right? And how there's humans in the path and it helps. So I just pulled up this article. We'll share it, of course, in the show notes. But basically, this is the list of nuclear close calls, meaning there have been many cases where good thing we had a human there to stop things like this from happening. And I don't know if I should even pull off any of these at random because they're kind of hard to read. But okay, let's take this one. I'm just going to read in real time. I've not read it yet. 9th of November, 1965, the command center of the Office of Emergency Planning went on full nuclear alert after a massive power outage in the northeastern United States. Several nuclear bomb detectors used to distinguish between regular power outages and power outages caused by a nuclear blast near major U.S. cities malfunctioned due to circuit errors, creating the illusion of a nuclear attack. All right, so that's one example of where our checks and balances somewhere in the command line, we thought there was a nuclear war going on.
Yeah.
And this is maybe a dozen cases of this happening with just nuclear weapons alone. Now, the issue here is you have 3 superpowers with a couple, maybe 10, 20,000 nukes. What happens when you have every human being a superpower and they each have their own arsenal of nukes here, right? I recall one of these, I don't know which one it is, but there was a situation where I think the Russians were in a submarine and they got the nuclear missile warnings, and the person with his hand on the button chose not to push the button simply because he thought the situation wasn't feasible, right? That's why we didn't have a big nuclear disaster, because one human chose to override the chain of command.
That was the premise of Crimson Tide.
Okay, or maybe it wasn't the movie though. I remember
Okay.
one of these being illustrated, but these are examples that did happen, right? Where we came so close, where we had all of these checks and balances, and luckily 12 for 12, nothing bad happened. How much do we want to push this here, right? And again, that's with just nukes. It's a whole different game when you have this potential concern ubiquitous. So it feels like, yeah, we could have humans, but yeah, is that even close to being enough?
Again, I think it's like the Avengers 2 Ultron thing. It's like, no, we need Jarvis the AI to save us from Ultron the AI.
Yeah, no, that might be part of it, but
it's like,
yeah, in Avengers, that's just 2 AIs, right? Just with 2 people.
Yeah.
What if one person says, "Hey, I don't like Jarvis," like, let me be in charge today. The example I put forward is, for example, in the US, we have this horrible issue with mass shootings in schools and stuff like that, where you have essentially like teenagers or grade schoolers killing other grade schoolers because these teenagers, they haven't fully developed yet. They don't really understand the full consequences of their actions, and they're perfectly okay sacrificing their own lives to take out a dozen other kids, right, to get points in their mind. And what happens when every teenager of the planet has the capability to not get an AR-15, but to get something like this, where they can do far more damage for far less intrusion, and not even sacrifice their own life in the initially, or maybe they do and they don't even care. How do you stop that happening on a global scale?
And again, I do think it's more computer resources. Again, I don't know how to quantify the time energy spent by one AI is that greater than another one. But if you have more of that trying to stop it, would that work? I guess we're kind of assuming they are equally intelligent. I don't know, that's been one of the premises. Every AI there's lots of them, but they're all equally intelligent.
Well, even with us and the mass shootings, we're all equally intelligent. We can't stop it. Or why haven't we stopped it? Why can't we stop this problem where we don't even have the super intelligence yet?
I guess it feels like the not a threat to humanity kind of problems, where it's like, oh, it's just Florida. everyone else is fine.
Right. Isn't it like the second leading cause of death now for kids?
I think it might be the leading cause of death among kids or something like that.
Right. Just not a big deal, I guess.
Yeah.
So there's so many things that are causing damage out there that are hard problems that we're not even close to solving. And this is far harder than any of those problems.
So I guess it's almost. I think it's like like you said, like the scale of the universe kind of thing. It's like almost when I say like an evolutionary problem, so where throughout all of human history, everything has worked out because of some other new technological change that has solved past problems. And I kind of tend to continue to believe in that optimism, but human history is only a few thousand years old.
Right.
And like are these getting to an intelligence that would take humanity hundreds of thousands, millions of years to get to? Because the universe is easily billions of years old. So yeah, like I wonder. At what point does it kind of like break even? Like, oh, it's no longer can just rely on human ingenuity. Like not a single human, but like all of humanity kind of thing.
Right. So there's a couple trajectories here, but it's probably worth introducing the Fermi paradox. So the Fermi paradox is the way civilization goes is it just starts advancing, right? And it has a small growth that turns exponential over time. And technology follows that exponential pattern, and basically advancement will continue indefinitely. And just a small growth rate leads to basically tremendous amounts of growth in a very short time. So like a 2% GDP growth means if we continue this for like 100,000 years, we'll have enough humans and enough colonization of, the entire galaxy, something like that, right? It takes a very short amount of time with exponential growth to do that. A quick example is, for example, bacteria double twice or once every hour, right? And if you take a number that doubles every hour, there will be more bacteria than the amount of atoms in the planet in like a week or a month or something like that, some very short amount of time, right? So that's the trajectory we're on right now. And the Fermi paradox is, well, if everything follows that, how come we don't see intelligence all over the universe? Because the moment you get past the tipping point, you're spread across your entire galaxy in a very small amount of time. Therefore, the entire universe should be full and teeming with life. If it just happens in one place, it can spread all over very quickly. Yet we see nothing. And the paradox, one answer to the paradox is there's these notion of great filters in place. For example, when you have this bacteria doubling, well, obviously the entire planet isn't made of bacteria, because there's these checks and balances in place that chops these exponential curves and keeps them in check. This happens with all populations, right? They have this growth cycle until they reach a tipping point, and then they go back down. And we're on that growth cycle right now for humans. But yeah, so part of the Fermi paradox is, or one answer to it is, there's these great filters that civilizations and intelligence needs to go through, these checkpoints, where it could be that there's enough great filters, or that there's enough intensity in each great filter to stop life from ever getting to this ubiquitous place where it takes over a galaxy. And for some great filters might be it's very hard to just get life going from non-life, right? That might be one. Another one might be it's very hard to go from unicellular life to multicellular life. It took the planet over 1 billion years to make that transition. Another big one might be it's very hard to go from multicellular life to like intelligent life, right? Intelligent life just showed up on this planet a couple million years ago. And then another great filter might be, well, it's very hard for intelligent life not to destroy itself very quickly. So that's the one that we might be dealing with now. The ultimate great filter might be, once intelligence gets to the point, it accelerates to the point where it just destroys itself. And that might be the answer, a potential answer to the Fermi paradox of, wait, if all intelligent life will accelerate and fill up the galaxy, why don't we see anything? Well, because they all destroy themselves.
That's interesting. So like the possibility that AI kills humanity in 1,000 years, like our own doing kind of thing. Like,
well, it's a natural course of things is one way to look at it.
Yeah.
That's how any exponential curve ends, right?
It's interesting. So I'm trying to think, like, if we're trying to, like, now, like, think about, like, the rules of optimization kind of thing, just like some very introductory premises, like, I was like, can we just preserve humanity? Like that's an optimization for humanity. But then we get into, like, Prisoner's Dilemma and iRobot, and it's like that still doesn't necessarily work.
It's one of those things where this problem is here, and it's here today. That's kind of the issue. And just like the asteroid that's barreling down at us and don't look up, it's on its way. The check is in the mail, but it's a matter of, okay, what do we do now? Like, do we care, or do we just enjoy the ride? And there's a handful of outcomes, and only a few of them might be the ones that we think are sensible for humans. For example, one outcome is the one that we've been mentioning, where you end up in this prisoner dilemma to the point where we just end up sacrificing all humans, and humans are done. Right. So another outcome is we figure out how to align ourselves. But at that point, you're going to have these AI that are far more intelligent than us. What does that mean for humanity at that point? A few things, right? This kind of turns a circle from our earlier conversation. Are the AI developing a form of consciousness? And then do we just kind of say, hey, you're a much better version of humans. How about, you guys just take over, we'll take the back seat, and you spread our goals and values forward, right? Just like how at the end of the day, no human alive today is going to, or this has been true up until now, no human ever alive has lived, past 120 years. What we've done is we've passed down all of our morality and values and ethics to the next generation. Well, is that the next step? We just pass it down to the AI and let them hopefully do what we think is in our best interest, realizing that we can't fully control our kids. It's up to them to, take over the planet and do what they think is in the best interest of civilization.
That's a good point, because I think the way that AI learns, all of the inputs are from humans.
Mm-hmm. Currently, yes.
Yeah.
And at some point, look, it's very easy to realize if we don't destroy ourselves, the AI is just going to do everything we can do, but much better. So we may not be left to do anything that is, for example, in the traditional sense, constructive, right? Meaning that there may not be a need to have a career or an education to make money and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Really, what existence might turn out to be is, or where all meaning may potentially end up coming from, is just the subjective experience of being a human. That's it.
Yeah.
The point of existing is to experience things, and nothing else beyond that, because everything else beyond that is taken care of by the robots.
Yeah.
So at that point, we just focus on that, and the robots do whatever they're going to do, with the hope that they they either have our best interests and keep us around, or we instill our best interests in them and they continue forward.
I'm glad you fit it. I kind of wrap it like I'm glad. That's a good, optimistic take. Especially I like the analogy of passing on wisdom to the next generation. Like that's just humanity's been doing that forever. And if AI is that next generation, can we pass on wisdom?
Right. And what happens to humans at that point? Or do we just merge with the AIs and we subjectively experience what they experience? Do they develop consciousness and therefore, hey, that there's these conscious beings that are better than us? We can, kind of let them words. What would really, I don't want to end on the good notes. I'll turn it good at the end. But what would really suck is we develop these AI. They don't end up having a form of consciousness. They're just doing things that for the sake of doing things, right? And they realize humans don't exist. So they continue on for billions and billions of years doing whatever they think is important. But they don't experience anything. They don't have a sense of consciousness. So that's likely the outcome we want to avoid. But the other two, I think, make sense. Having some version of ourselves continue onward and experiencing things going forward.
So it's like with humanity, it's like you teach them how to care, and with toddlers, like one of the first things to talk about is the golden rule, like do unto others as you would have them do it to you. Like I wonder, can you apply that to an AI somehow?
Yeah, well, yeah. We're not going to solve the answer, but again, it comes back to you got to do that to all of them, right? You got to every single right. You got to get it so that nothing.
I think we just need the vast majority.
Well, it depends. Does it take one bad actor to one rotten apple to spoil the barrel?
History says no. Like, there's still lots and lots of apples.
Great Filter says yes.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like that's why I say like it's almost like what's our long term now? Is it 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, or a million years? That's a totally different conversation for every day. Like, will humans still be around in a million years?
Yeah.
That's why like that. I think that's a succinct way of phrasing it. Is that it could be AI is the cause. We don't know that, but it could be. But just the idea of, will humans as a whole, are we like self-damaging enough that we won't be around a million years, or is there optimism that we will be? And whatever the answer to that question is, probably the same as the answer to like, will AI kill us or not?
That's hard to say.
Yeah. Okay. I'm okay leaving it there.
Sure. Well, we've opened plenty of cans of worms in this one.
Yeah. Well, now that's what I'm feeling like. Will humans be around in a million years? But, yeah. Okay. Because I think that it might have been the time machine, but I think there's something else where like humans evolve over that time frame to be like just conscious orbs.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a long time. Like, do we need bodies at that point?
Probably not. I mean, once you just focus on subjective experience, you can be in any body you want. And let's be a cat for today, or a butterfly, or
Like, you probably still need some form of like energy input
Yeah.
Could just be could be sunlight though. Like plants have
yeah,
done that.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure. There's this. I don't know if we're gonna wrap this. If I go down this, maybe TBD.
Okay. Do you want to try? Do you want to try? Like, go ahead and give that one quick little thought. We'll finish. No matter what it is, we'll end up to this.
Okay. Well, there's this whole notion of the singularity, right? We may have talked about this before, but I think it's Kurzweil who put this up. He had a prediction in the next 20 or 40 years, something like this. AIs and humans and technology are going to merge together, and we're going to be all one consciousness, and that changes everything. And it's not a million years from now; it's literally within our lifetime.
Okay. We'll let you stew on that.
Right.
This it was a great conversation, but I don't have those like normal positive feelings I have after our great conversations. But it wasn't truly pessimistic either. So it was a good one. It was solid, very thought provoking. So thank you for that.
Yeah, well, thanks, Aaron, for the conversation. I think, we're not necessarily here to solve every problem, but maybe just raising awareness is enough. The fact that this could be an issue that we might want to think about, is something that hopefully this episode got across. So, yeah, thanks for the conversation, Aaron, and thanks everybody for listening and watching. And if you have any feedback, leave a comment, send a upvote or subscribe. And thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of the Mind Money Spectrum podcast. Be sure to visit mindmoneyspectrum.com to access the entire library of episodes. Remember, it's not black and white, but the wide spectrum of gray area where you get to pursue the freedoms you want in life. Opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested in directly. Have a nice day.